It's a nice day for a fright wedding. Here's your look at the NECA Toys Bride of Chucky Retro Cloth Chucky and Tiffany. From the hilarious horror film Bride of Chucky, the murderous doll inhabited by the soul of a serial killer is back on the rampage. But this time he's met his match. His old flame Tiffany rescues his parts from a police impound and has marriage on her mind. Finally in clothed action figure form, this two-pack includes Chucky and Tiffany in fabric clothing, plus plenty of accessories. An additional swappable head for Chucky, 2 knives, 2 guns, axe, and necklace. The figures stand 5.5 inches tall and fully posable. I love a good wedding. Something old, something new, something black, something blue. Relating that more to Chucky, I think, than Tiffany. Before we get a closer look, though, at their new retro cloth Bride of Chucky, Chucky and Tiffany, let me first send out a big thank you to the folks over at NECA Toys that did, in fact, provide this sample that we can have a look at in this review. FYI, though, the Bride of Chucky retro cloth set is slated to drop April 2022. If it hasn't already dropped in retail stores and online, it should be dropping shortly, though. Let's go ahead and measure off the figures, starting first with Chucky. Chucky stands. Now, keeping in mind, these are using the smaller size retro cloth bodies. We're going to be using some comparisons also in a second. But Child's Play's Chucky, Bride of Chucky's Chucky, is 5¼ inches in height, or is about 13.5 centimeters tall. Moving then on to Tiffany, who has higher hair after all. The figure is 5.5 inches in height, or about 14 centimeters tall. Then, as promised, here's the other figure comparisons here. Here is the new Bride of Chucky Chucky along with the retail release Retro Cloth Chucky. One thing you may notice already is that the new 2-pack are using plastic molded hair, not the rooted hair, which is a kind of a bit of a bummer. I really wish that they could have used doll rooted hair like they had done with the Retro Cloth release Chucky's before. Now that is the retail release Chucky. This was the original one that came out for the Scream Factory, and as far as I know, it's yet to get a retail release if you wanted the original Good Guy design. Still though, using rooted hair, not the plastic hair. Then, of course, we can also bring in the ultimate versions. There's the ultimate Bride of Chucky Chucky, and of course his trusty bride as well. There's Tiffany. The figures themselves seem like they're scaled up versions of the original ultimate figures. And don't worry, we'll be doing more comparisons on those two figures in a second. First, though, let's have a look at the included accessories. Chucky and Tiffany get the Eye of Damballa. It's been molded and painted well in silver. As you can see, it's got the middle ruby stone in the center. And spin around to the back, it also has the scripture carved into the plastic. It does have a real working chain. And to compare it with the one that we got included with the ultimate release, you'll see right away it's the exact same mold. In fact, the only thing that's really different from what I can see is that the one that was with the ultimate release is slightly more tarnished. But other than that, it looks like it's exactly the same. Same chain and everything else. So in this case, they haven't actually scaled up the Eye of Damballa. They've kept it the same. The figures also come included with an axe. Now, this is one thing that is scaled up. This was the original axe that came included with the ultimate release. You can see it's about half a head bigger, maybe even a full axe head bigger than the original release. It also seems like it's slightly more of a darker red. You can even see more so when we look at the handles. One thing that's nice, though, about the Retro Cloth release is that they've actually put a little bit of graining, a little grain work on the handle of the wood. Whereas the original one was actually just more painted in just a matte red finish. So I do like the fact that they've added a little more detail. The head of the axe also seems like it's a lot shinier than the original released axe as well. The figure also comes included with 2 variations of knife. One is a serrated knife, good for slicing bread. The other one is good for slicing skin. You never really want to be slicing skin. Just to compare it, though, this was the original one that came included with the ultimate release. It still seems a lot bigger, doesn't it? And this is also the one, picking up the one that comes with the Retro Cloth release, picking up the one that comes with the ultimate release. This is the difference in size of blades. So again, everything has been scaled up. You also get yourself his and her pistols. The larger one being for Chucky, the slightly more smaller and compact one being for Tiffany. And again, like we've done before, this is the one that came included with the original ultimate release, slightly again smaller. Same paint. The handles also don't seem too different from one another. And then for the her variety, here's the pistol that comes included with the Retro Cloth release. This is the one that comes included with the ultimate release. Again, painting across big, broad brushstrokes. Everything has been scaled up. Again, surprisingly, except for the eye and Damballa. I would have thought, if anything, they would have also made that necklace a lot larger, too. On to now the figures. Now, Chucky also gets an alternate head sculpt. He's the only one that actually gets a second head portrait. Tiffany's other two portraits she got with the Ultimate release, unfortunately, have been axed with this release. Looking at Chucky's alternate head sculpt right now, it's definitely more of a laughing Chucky, and we're going to bring in the original one. This was the Ultimate release. You could probably already tell by the fact it was slightly smaller. I mean, looking at it, it does look, in fact, like it is the exact same head sculpt, which is fine. The head was that good in the first place. I do think they've gone with a much darker approach when it comes to especially the socketed eye. I do like the darker use of red that they've gone with on this head sculpt versus the original one, but both head sculpts are quite good. The darker colors also for the stitch work, as you can see, like this one here is more the lighter silver color for the staples and stitches, whereas this is kind of going more of a darker, dingier, blackish gray. Really nice head sculpt. Still, though, I asked the question why this figure could have not included rooted doll hair. Maybe the more elaborate way that they've stapled on the hair in the movie would have been a little harder to pull off in a real raw retro cloth doll rooted hair. In fact, again, to bring in the original Chucky, this was the retail release. This one has, as you can see, like long flowing red locks. It is a bit jarring, admittingly, when you do see the retro cloth release of Chucky and Tiffany, that they didn't go the route of using the rooted doll hair, but again, maybe because there was so much more staples and other things to apply the hair to the side of the head, it was just so much easier just to scale up the head sculpt. But still, part of me wishes that they could have used the rooted doll hair as well. That is the alternate head sculpt. This is, of course, picking up Chucky right now. This is with the head sculpt that we start things off with. And again, you can easily change out the head. We'll do it in a second. If you want to go with more of this, from the smiling face to the laughing face, it's easy. You just pop that off the ball joint. Before we do that, though, I'm going to bring in the Ultimate release Chucky. How many times have I already said Ultimate in this review? I really hope that hasn't been a drinking game. Head sculpt-wise, from the slightly smaller to the slightly taller, you can see that it seems to be the exact same head sculpt. But again, going back to the point I mentioned when we look at the alternate head portrait, I gotta say I like the darker coloring on the socket of the eye a lot more. It was a little too red, I have to say, for the Ultimate release. I do like the darker color a lot more on the retro cloth release. If you see it from the side, it seems to be the same. One thing that isn't here, though, on the new Chucky is a little of additional sheen. You can remember when we looked at this head sculpt, it had a clear coat over top of the face, so it added a little bit of sheen and shine to it. The new Chucky doesn't have that, and I actually think it's an improvement to the figure's head, to the fact that they didn't add that clear coat over top of it. Spin the figures around to the back, you can see the hairs are exactly the same. You see the exposed steel head underneath that. That's also the case on both the same as well, and the staples are in the same place as well. So it's likely, again, they've just taken this head sculpt and scaled it up to give us this Chucky here. If you did want to change the head sculpt out, by the way, just hold on to the torso. Hold on for dear life. Don't let go, whatever you do. Just pop that off, and then just replace it. Root back in the head, the neck, onto the ball joint, and that's what he looks like with the alternate head sculpt. I like the laughing face, but I have to say I might just stick with the idea of having him with the smiling face. I personally feel it's the better of the two head sculpts. As for the rest of his body, we're going to go ahead and bring in the good guy in first so you guys can see. They have made some changes, of course, to the costuming because, of course, he's not going to have the clean-looking suit that he had with the original film, good guy. So, of course, you can see, like, his suit stripes, his sleeve stripes, a little bit more broader also on this one, and certainly not as bright as the one that we got before. The coveralls also have been ripped. They've been dingied up. And it also seems as well they've made the pockets a little bit smaller. See, the pocket on the front is a lot smaller than the pocket that we got before in the original retrocloth release. The downside of also not using the real doll hair is that this Chucky seems visibly smaller. I mean, when we put the two together, the bodies do line up, leg-wise, torso, and arms. But unfortunately, because this head also does have the rooted hair, it does make it look as if he's just slightly taller. And I think everything else lines up proportionately. I do like the coloring, though, and I like that they've actually gone in there and added a darker, dingier brown. They've scuffed up some of his coveralls, as he would have had in the film, and they've made the noted rips. They're also in his sleeves, down here on the top of his shoulder, and also when you spin the figure around, the coveralls as a whole are a lot dingier. the brighter tempograph of all the printing of the things that the good guys are known for doing, except for killing people. It's also a lot murkier. It's a little harder to make out on these coveralls. So I think they've done a nice job of scuffing up the suit. And of course, the benefit of these being retro cloth figures is the fact that they do have the real cloth. And that's always a good selling point for me. Articulation for Chucky, it would be the same. The head is up, down on a ball joint. Making sure, of course, we pop the head down in place. There we go. Arms do hinge out, the same as the other two Chuckies we looked at before. The arms are a little on the tight side, but you can hinge them out at a 45, 90 degree angle. Let's get that right. Arms do rotate back and forth. He does have a hinge in the elbow. Rotate the lower forearm, and yeah, he does have the hand rotation as well. That hinges back and forth. Upper torso's on a ball joint, so it's nice to see that they've got some articulation there in the torso. Legs split out. You can come forward and back with the legs, bend at the knee, rotate the leg as well, and there's also some nice ankle articulation here on this Chucky. And yeah, in case you are curious, he still has the printed soles on the undersides of his feet. Let's bring in the good guy doll that we got before. A little bit different also on the soles too. Not only the feet a lot larger here on the Bride of Chucky, but also you can see as well the red take up a lot more of it, and there's no more of that white. There's white on the sides, but there's certainly not a lot of white on the undersoles of Chucky's feet. And that's Chucky. A good-looking figure, I have to say. Like, it literally just seems to be the case that they've just taken this ultimate Chucky and just scaled him up, given him, of course, the retro cloth body, and given him, of course, real clothing. The original Ultimate figure wouldn't have had that. As for Tiff, unlike Chucky, who gets a secondary head portrait, Tiffany only comes included with the one that's currently on her neck right now. The original one that we'll do comparisons in a second for came with 2 alternate head sculpts. Now, I'm not bummed by the idea that they didn't include the other 2 head sculpts. The bride head doesn't make any sense for me, at least to be displayed with this figure. Although technically, I suppose you could take the jacket off if you wanted to revert her back to the bride, but who's really going to be displaying Tiffany as the bride doll? The other head sculpt would have been just the regular smiling face. Don't worry, we'll be comparing those in a second. Let's go ahead, first of all, pick up Tiffany and bring in her smaller counterpart so you can see that they settled on the one that has the visible teeth. It really was my favorite of the 3 head sculpts anyways, and I can't be bummed out by the idea that they left the other 2 off the table. The head sculpts, like the Chucky, I feel are more vibrant with the retro cloth release. Still, while using, I'm guessing, the same head sculpt, the colors are so much more vibrant on the retro cloth release, adding, in fact, even eyeshadow that wasn't really even there in the first place with the Ultimate release. The hair seems also the same, although the colors of the blonde are much brighter, and she has a lot less black bleeding through. Just to show you the difference, we're going to go ahead and bring in, there's the original one that came with this figure, of course, and for obvious reasons of being it just way too small, you wouldn't be able to display it with this head sculpt. But again, I think I like the smiling one with the teeth a lot more. And then the other one we had mentioned already was the bride doll, which unfortunately, yeah, you can't display with her. But again, I don't know why anyone would want to display her with the bride look unless you bought yourself a second retro cloth release of her. So again, I really do like that they've decided to go with this head sculpt, and like the Chucky we looked at earlier, the paint is so much better on the retro cloth release than the smaller version of Tiffany here. She does have the leather jacket. The original one that was actually done in plastic has now been nicely removed and replaced by like a faux leather material. Now, I don't know if this is going to crack over time. Faux leather can also be problematic down the road, that it can start chipping and flaking. Providing you have it in good conditions and not a lot of humidity, you should be fine. The jacket, technically, you could undo if you really wanted to. Underneath the bodice of her dress would be all solid plastic, with the notable tattoo of Chucky up at the top corner. She does have the necklace, the same as what we got with the original release. But again, just a nicer looking representation of Tiffany. Still, though, I kind of wish that the figure could have had rooted doll hair as opposed to going the plastic route, just to kind of give it the more vibe of feeling like a retro cloth figure. The lower part of her dress, like the original smaller version of Tiffany, is actually a real fabric, and there is a wire frame that runs around the perimeter of it, so you can bend it if you really want to. We're going to lift this up just for a second, just to show you that she does have the fishnet stockings underneath. The original figure would have just done the job by doing it in paint. It's nice to see that they've actually did add real tights over top of the legs of the retro cloth body. The boots also seem very similar, although the laces, you can see, yeah, the laces seem a little higher, probably because as well that the boots are a little bit higher also. Now, one thing, unfortunately, is that they did go in and paint the joint. And as the times that I've already now moved the feet back and forth, the paint has chipped off. But honestly, you're going to have a dress covering over it anyways. Really like the look of Tiffany here. For her articulation, we don't really have to, of course, change out the head sculpts because she doesn't come with any other ones than the one we're looking at. Her head is on a ball joint. Now, while you are rotating, of course, the head, it's going to be clipping against the leather jacket. Just know that when you are moving the figure. Head does look down, head looks up, and it also rocks back and forth. Like with Chucky before, because of course they are using the same bodies other than a few changes of molding here. The arms also are on 90-degree angle bends. You can move the arms forward, again, back, bend at the elbow, rotate the forearm, rotate the hand. Her upper torso seems still on a ball joint, which is good. You can rotate it all the way around if you wanted to. Legs split out. Let's just bring the dress up here. Legs split out. You can bring the legs forward, bring the legs back. There is a swivel, essentially where that's attached to the peg joint. She does also have a bend at the knee. And when it comes to her feet, the feet not only move this way, but also ankle pivot this way as well. Selling points for this set are, first of all, if you did want to get yourself a retrocloth release of the bride look of Chucky and the bride, of course, of Tiffany, then yeah, this would be the only, let's just fix her dress, make things a little bit more professional, polished. There we go. The benefit certainly of this set is the fact that you finally get yourself scaled up versions of brides Chucky and brides Tiffany. If you already had picked up, for example, the original retrocloth Chucky, whether you picked up the original retail release or the one that released by Shout Factory, yeah, you still get, again, nice scaled up versions of the figures. And really, when you are looking at them, they are, in fact, what seems to be the same head sculpts that they use for the Ultimate releases, bringing back those figures right now. So they didn't really reinvent the wheel in that sense, but they certainly did a better job of painting the figure's head sculpts, both in the case of Chucky and both in the case of Tiffany. I do feel like the paint is a lot nicer and richer on the retrocloth releases. Negative points are I wish that the figures could have had rooted doll hair, keeping consistent with the other Chuckies we already got before, being that we already have two Chuckies already compared to. I really wish that the figures could have also included rooted doll hair. Other than that, though, I really like this set, and these two figures are going to go rather nicely with the other retrocloth Chuckies I've already collected. Of course, now that we've gotten ourselves a retrocloth bride of Chucky, Chucky and Tiffany, the question I'm curious to ask is whether NECA is planning to release a seed of Chucky Glenn, and who would be even interested in a retrocloth Glenn/Glenda. The way I'm thinking of it, they could release it as a 2-pack, having both Glenn and Glenda respectively packaged inside as a 2-pack, or just release Glenn with the component pieces to make him into Glenda, and package him along with a re-release here of Chucky and Tiffany. Maybe, if anything, give them slightly different head sculpts. I know some would say, do we even need Glenn? And I say, if anything, finish off the family. So at least we have all the characters representing the retrocloth line. Speaking of retrocloth line, one thing I did comment on in this review, maybe more than once, is that the figures here are having molded plastic hair as opposed to rooted doll hair. And I thought initially, I've had some longer time to think about this. Initially, I did say, why couldn't they have used rooted doll hair and have it close to resembling the ones that we got before with the other two Chuckies? But then I thought about it more, and all the other retrocloth figures that we've gotten up to this point have all had plastic hair. Except for one, except for Victor Crowley. And I don't even know if you would consider that hair, the few little straws that he had embedded into the top of his head. But I guess technically you could say Victor Crowley also had real rooted doll hair. In all the other cases, all the other retrocloth figures have had plastic sculpted head sculpts. So really, like, these ones aren't deviating away from the idea of what retrocloth figures look like. If anything, it's the exclusive Scream Factory Good Guy Chucky and the Scream Factory retail release Chucky are the only differences, the only ones that really do stand out like a sore thumb. These ones are still sticking to the idea of plastic hair. Now, what do you guys think? Should this 2-pack of Chucky and Tiffany have had rooted doll hair, or do you think that they should have stuck with the idea of using plastic head sculpts like we ended up getting in this release? A big thank you, though, to the folks over at NECA Toys that did provide the sample of Bride of Chucky, Chucky and Tiffany that we could have a look at in this review. Now, this set is slated to launch and drop it like it's hot, in April of 2022. I can't believe I just said drop it like it's hot. Most of the online sites still have it as a pre-order, so if anything, it should start hitting store shelves shortly if it hasn't already. So keep your eyes peeled if you guys are interested to pick up this set for yourself. If you are new to this channel, you're enjoying the content that you're seeing, make sure you hit the subscribe button down below. I can't believe I said drop it like it's hot. Make sure as well you turn on the bell notifications so you're going to get those reminders of when new videos are going to be dropping, hot or otherwise. And make sure, yes, you're staying tuned to this channel while we have wrapped up the review for the retro cloth Bride of Chucky and Tiffany. There's definitely going to be a lot more NECA reviews lined up and coming your way. As always, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.